Women have made a difference, and as I look at all of them this morning, the beat goes on. I see individuals making their place in history. I am happy to rub elbows with you. Our children may never see our names in history books, but I believe our actions snowball and our efforts will mushroom and make the world a better place. Again, I thank you for your support. It means so much to us. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Tarnisha Clyde, President of the Manatee County NAACP. Tarnisha is a trailblazer and a community leader second to none. She has trailblazed in the founding of the Black Chamber of Commerce, serving both Manatee and Sarasota counties. Last year, she became president of the Manatee County NAACP. She did not shirk from what this new role would entail. Under her leadership, this branch is healing, rebuilding, and serving the community, ensuring equality and justice for all. I present to you a young woman, and she's young, I'm 80. You want to feel young, hang around with me. She makes a difference. Tarnisha.
Well, I feel a little special, Peggy. Just want to thank everyone for being here. It means a lot to all of us, our executive committee members. If you could please stand so we can recognize you all, our officers and executive committee members. Do I have Susan, our treasurer, in the back? Did you step away, Susan? But I want to recognize Susan as well. Everyone on this team, if you could please remain standing. Susan, are you there?
Right now, receipt.
Okay, you're writing receipt, that's okay. You gotta take the money, that's right, amen. We have to do things in decency and order, we need the money, amen. So with that being said, I just want to say personally and publicly, thank you guys so much for standing on the front line with me, because this has not been an easy journey, but together we can accomplish so much, and we're better together. That's one of my slogans that I put out there. We're so much better together. Thank you guys so much for being here with us. With that being said, this MLK breakfast is something that's very, very special. I had the pleasure of taking on this task because our Freedom Fund chair is a legislative aide, and she's in Tallahassee, so we're okay with that because she's fighting for us. But this was particularly important to me because of me being in a position, a leadership position, and being a woman. It is definitely tasked with someone that is going to take the bull by its ears, and you know, you have to be bold and you have to be courageous in order to stand up to some men. Amen. Amen. So with that being said, this is why I thought we got to tell her story. MLK's point of view when he spoke about the dream, he talked about his daughter being seated or seen as equal. And that's something that I think we have to remember. In order for Dr. King's dream to come to full fruition, we have to make sure that the women is treated as equal, just as we do race and any other ethnicity. So with that being said, I want to just highlight some individuals that's going to be here with us today. I want to recognize our elected officials, and I just want to make sure that I get everyone, and if I do not pronounce the words or the names correctly, I'm going to yield to you to pronounce your name, okay? And I do know sometimes that the name that I'm going to start with is always often botched. But I'm going to have our clerk of court to stand up and introduce herself without me messing it up. Yes! Coloniso. I was going to say that, but I wanted to make sure I was not going to be the one to botch that name up. Trust me. We have our Commissioner, Besty Benac, if she can stand and be recognized. Our Commissioner, Misty Serbia, is here, if she can be recognized as well. Past servant and so very well recognized is Miss Karen Carpenter, former school board member, if she would stand as well. Thank you so much for serving and all that you have done. I want to also go ahead and introduce our mistress of ceremony. She can be quoted and seen on ShavonReed.com. Did I get that right?
Yes, correct.
So if you want to Google her and just read her extensive background, please visit there. But more importantly, she's a mother of two, a wife, an author, radio personality, a community activist, and she's a child of God. I think that's most important. And so I just want to recognize her and highlight her and bring her to the forefront, Mrs. Shavon Reed. Thank you. Test, 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 test. Yeah.
Good morning anyway. I think I can speak loud enough. How's everybody doing? Awesome, awesome. Great, great. It's truly a pleasure to be here this morning at the 2020 MLK breakfast. I have to say that I was honored to be a part of this morning, especially with today's theme, today's focus. And you know, there was a time when women could vote. There was a time when they didn't have a voice. There was a time when they were limited in educational opportunities and only seen as caregivers to the home and caregivers to their children, which I can say is the most important job. I am a mom of two and I have a 9-month-old. And I can tell you that I found myself in a place in my life where I was trying to figure out the balance between the career, woman, professional, and being mom at home. And in the last 9 months of my life, I have just been so grateful to mothers, having a 10-year-old and a 9-month-old, and both of them at the years in their life where they need their mama. They want their mama. And there are no breaks. And I can tell you that trying to pursue your dreams and your goals at the same time of trying to balance your household is one of the most challenging tasks out there, but it's also one of the most rewarding. And so when you have opportunities like this to celebrate women who have grown from different areas of struggle, competition, lack, and now we're at a place where we can try to balance those two things, I'm all for it. So when Tarnisha reached out to me and she told me what was happening this morning, I'm like, yes, absolutely, I would love to be a part. So thank you all for having me be here and sharing with you all today. I already know that the panelists are going to be incredible. We want to make sure that in this time we take a moment to talk about not just the challenges but the successes and how do we continue on that path. It's so easy for us to remember, you know, the struggle, but what are the obstacles now that we're facing? And how can we truly come together to make sure that we are addressing those things in unity and not just singling out one area or one thing, but doing it collectively. So to move things forward, we will go ahead and have our invocation and blessing by Pastor James Sykes, executive member. Please welcome him as he comes forward.
Let us pray. Eternal God, our Heavenly Father, first of all, we just want to say thank you. Thank you for you woke us up this morning. And then you started us on another day. We thank you for allowing us to have traveling mercy as you brought us safely to this destination. And Father, we're here this morning to do what is pleasing in your sight. And as the hymn writer wrote, stony the road we trod, bitter the testing rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet, with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. But that's okay. We have come, Lord, over a way our tears have been watered. We have come, treading the path through the blood of the slaughtered. But out from a gloomy past, till we now stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. Thank you for this organization. Thank you for everyone that's in the presence of our voices. Eternal God, thank you for Manatee County. Thank you for the city of Bradenton and surrounding areas. Thank you for this organization who have been standing for freedom many, many years. Thank you for our leaders. Thank you for the executive committee. Thank you for all our elected officials, one by one. And eternal God, as we come today, whatever we do and say, let it be for your glory, let it be for your praise, and let it be for your honor. That when we leave this place, we'll be a better Christian, we'll be a better person, we'll be able to love each and every one. And now, Lord, we thank you for the food that has been prepared for us as well. Blessed and sanctified. Let it be nourishment for our bodies. Bless those hands that prepared it, and they that labored over it. And we give you all the praise and all the glory and honor. We ask it in the Master's name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, we pray, and all of God's people said, amen. Amen.
Thank you so much.
Now, according to our agenda, we will do lift every voice and sing. Everyone, please stand.
Where the white straight from the places of God where we met thee. Bless our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shall we leave thy hand, may we forever ascend, true to our God, true to our native land.
All right.
That was amazing. I mean, seriously, I think that's probably the best version I've heard an audience sing, because when this part of the agenda comes up, I'm a little nervous. You all can have your seats. I'm nervous because I'm thinking about that high note. And I'm trying to prep myself. Okay, let me go lower when we get to that, because the person next to me is going to hear that crack in my throat. I won't be able to do that. And y'all did an amazing job. Someone sound like they have an operatic background out there. Was that Miss Cynthia? I heard it. And Pastor Sykes. Beautiful. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you all for sharing that moment with me. I believe we are now ready for breakfast. Ms. Tarnisha, how do you want to handle it?
This table first.
Okay, so then someone will come to your table and let you know when it's time for you to come up. We'll start with the head tablers with our speakers. I'm a firm believer that it's okay to disagree, but can you love each other past it?
Amen.
Can you work each other towards the common goal in the end, where it's not just about you and your opinion, but it's about the result of the greater people? And so when we share today, please, everyone just come with a humble heart and know that there's no opportunity for us to overstate each other or to say men are better than women or women are better than men. This is to say that we're growing together. We've come through a lot, here we are, and where do we go next? So everyone's voice is welcome in this room today, okay? So with that being said, we will have our panelists come take a seat and they will give brief introductions of themselves. Please welcome Lillian, Nicole, Jamie, Nasheka, Katrina, Betsy, Latrina. I apologize, it's Latrina, and Janene. We will have to go back and forth with sharing mics, so if there is a situation where someone speaks lower than the other person, just wave your hand, motion to me, and I'll make sure that they get the mic, or we'll definitely speak up. Okay? So what we'll do, we'll start from this side of the room. Ms. Lillian, to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me in the back? It says it's on. My name is Lillian, Elliott. Well, let me just stand up and project. My name is Lillian Elliott, and I am here representing MCF, the Manatee Community Foundation. I'm on their board of directors. But I wear another hat in the community as well. I'm Director of Operations for the Women's Resource Center. So it's a pleasure for me to be here today. I come to you with the experience of being in Manatee County since 2004. I came as one of those corporate executive transfer people, was 35 years with PepsiCo, and really got attached to Manatee County. So when I retired 5 years ago, there was no choice but for me to stay. So I'm happy to be here with you today, and look forward to hearing from you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kahn. I work for Bank of America. I'll be celebrating 10 years with Bank of America. I'm originally from Delaware. I've been in Manatee County now for 2 years, but have helped cover the market the past 8 years from Tampa. It's a lot different looking at Manatee County from Tampa, actually. It's actually better looking. I don't tell my Tampa friends that. But a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Nicole Parker. I'm also with Bank of America, but I am in the business banking division and cover Manatee, Sarasota County. I've been in Manatee County since 2009. Like Lillian, I was a corporate relo with banking. At the time I was with Chase Bank that had just acquired Washington Mutual and we're moving people down to help with that. And recently came over to Bank of America 2 years ago. When I moved here in 2009, I had 2 kids in high school who had to graduate from high school in Manatee County. So it definitely left an impact on our family. And just enjoy being here now and look forward to hearing from you today.
I'm Nasheka, Craddock. I'm Nasheka Craddock. I'm with the Burlington Police Department. I have been with them for almost 14 years. I've been in Manatee County most of my life. So I've kind of seen the ins and outs of what goes on. I'm happy to have been invited to this event and hopefully learn some things that I've not learned yet and give some insight on different points of views.
Good morning. My name is Latrina Singleton. I am an employee of the Manatee County School Board. I have been a principal and in administration in Manatee County for the past 9 years, and I am happy to be here today.
Hi, my name is Besty Benac. I'm currently serving as the chair of the Manatee County Commission. This is my second term. I first was elected in 2012. Before that, I worked for Manatee County, actually, starting in 1983. I worked in 1994 for Manatee County, then I worked for a civil engineering firm, actually the first company in Lakewood Ranch. So I've been around for a long time. I have raised my 2 children here, and now I have a granddaughter. It's the reward for not killing your children, I've been told. I'm very happy to be selected to speak with you all today. I know we've got so many great women leaders here in the audience, and men too. So I look forward to this conversation. Thank you very much.
My name is Janene Amick. I'm the CEO at Manatee Performing Arts Center downtown. Been with them 15 years, almost 16 years. Thank you so much for having us. I'd say that from a perspective, not only from a woman in Manatee County, but now a mom of 2 Marines, 1 son and 1 daughter, has definitely opened my eyes to women empowerment and equality in the service.
I'm going to ask all of our panelists here today.
We did try to rectify this mic situation, so if it goes in and out, we do apologize, but we'll certainly move forward. So before we begin with our initial question, I wanted to share something with you all that I found online, but wanted to read something in terms of statistics and numbers. And this article is from the Women's Leadership Gap. It is of November of 2018. It says, women constitute a majority of the U.S. population. Women are 50.8% of the U.S. population. They earn more than 57% of undergraduate degrees and 59% of all master's degrees. They earn 48.5% of all law degrees and 47.5% of all medical degrees. They earn 38% of Masters of Business Administration and other generalist degrees and 49% of specialized master degrees. They account for 47% of the U.S. labor force and 52.5% of the college-educated workforce. And yet, although they hold almost 52% of all management and professional level jobs, American women lag substantially behind men in terms of their representation in leadership positions. In the legal profession, they are 45% of associates, but only 22.7% of partners and 19% of equity partners. In medicine, they represent 40% of all physicians and surgeons, but only 16% of permanent medical school deans. In academia, they have earned the majority of doctorates for 8 consecutive years, but are only 32% of full professors and 30% of college presidents. In the financial services industry, they constitute 61% of accountants and auditors, 53% of financial managers, and 37% of financial analysts. But they are only 12.5% of chief financial officers in Fortune 500 companies. What does that say to us?
Yes.
It says that there's a gap. There's something going on. There's positions there, but I think one of the questions that we actually have for our panelists first to kick us off is, why do you feel there are generally so few women in top positions or leadership positions, roles, and you just heard the statistics? Would you like to answer?
I think it's pretty easy to answer based on perspective. There's always used to be men at the table. Well, now we have one woman at the table. We're done. That's equality. There's one woman there. Yeah. We got to change the perspective. That's not right. There's 10 seats at the table. Equality, 5 and 5. If I'm doing my math properly. Good for Bank of America. See. So equality be 5 and 5. Why couldn't it be 9 to 1? 9, or why couldn't it be all 10 women? We used to bump elbows in corporate world getting in. I even felt it 10 years ago when I first started with my female manager being threatened by me. Bumping elbows. So we just need to take the time to have the hard conversations and lift each other up and say, look, there's 10 seats at the table. We can all have a seat at the table. Let's get there together, as opposed to push our female counterparts back.
Thank you, Jamie. And I think you can give her a round of applause. There's a segment in your response that I think also needs to be brought to light, because I've dealt with it too, is when you go to that table and there's only 2 females in there, we fight. Or there's an issue, there's competitive, you know, I certainly in my career, whether it was entertainment and things like that, going to auditions, it was always like this competitive nature. I'm like, if you get it, then great. You know, so I hear you on that, and I just think that's a point to highlight, is instead of us having a competitive nature, how are we supporting each other? Does anyone else want to respond to that?
I'm not sure this is on. Can y'all hear me anyways?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny because I was thinking about competitiveness, and there's nothing wrong with competing with men. There really is nothing wrong with it. A lot of us are taught not to do that. I was thinking back, I grew up in a family of 6 children, and my mother was extremely competitive. Those that know me know that I could be very competitive. But when we were little, she used to have us race against each other. My brothers, I had 3 brothers, 3 sisters. We were never put in a women's category. You need to realize that it is a competitive. I understand your point about competing with women, and that can be problematic. But you have to compete in this world. You have to be willing to, you know, say, hey, I'm the better choice. I should be the leader, right? And not be afraid of that. We have to teach our young girls not to be afraid of, not to be afraid to compete. And you don't start out with a disadvantage. We've got to teach our young women that. And I think that's the way we make leaders. Say, look, you know, we talked about equity, equality, and I was afraid I'd fail that question when it came up, and I may. But I think we need to know that you do start out on an equal basis. It's just what happens over the years. What are women taught over the years? You know, it's just been a long history, but I think it's changing. I think we're making significant progress, and I know I will be working on that with my granddaughter.
I love that.
So Commissioner, your point being taken is that we have to train up to also be able to also be a go-getter, because a lot of times women have been taught to be passive, be quiet, don't say anything. Be a lady, you know, right. Just be in your position, be in your role, and that's just enough. So thank you for that comment.
I think one of the things when you talk about competition, there's nothing wrong with it, but also teaching to the spirit of that competition with dignity and respect. If it's done that way, it's a beautiful thing. There is a thing when I'm also a nurse, and you hear this, nurses eat their young. So you know, yeah, right? And those of you on the medical field can perhaps understand that, because you know, some things can be done. No, it's that medication. You're written up. So yes, competition, but with respect and dignity for one another. I think is teaching that key as well.
So, at least from my perspective, my perspective in regards to the gap. I think sometimes we have to be careful of statistics. I do know that there's quite a few women who are partners in firms that if you ask them if they want to be the pick, they say no. So it's not because they don't have the competitive nature, it's because they're confident enough in themselves sometimes that they realize they don't want to be at the top because they appreciate the life-work balance. And as you said, sometimes you have to be able to personally give a little of, you can't be sometimes the #1 mom and the best CEO in the world. One of those two things will give. And as a woman, I believe that we're a little bit more sensitive to that balance. And when we have families, we probably, depending on how we were raised, will lean a little bit more during those formidable years in our children, right, to give to them instead of to the corporation. Where we've seen the television shows, we've seen the movies and how it's portrayed, you know, the man doesn't have the problem. No disrespect to anybody who works 60 to 65 hours a week. But anybody knows that disrupts the home life of a child being brought up. And I believe that that sometimes will hold women back because although we may have been given the opportunities, sometimes we just personally decide not to take them because there's other things in life we believe need our time more.
Yes, thank you. That's very good.
Yes, as mentioned earlier, I certainly have been in that boat. I'm learning. This is a very new season for me. I'm literally learning and figuring it out. Like there's no answer other than I know that I want my home life and my children. And one of the things that I've said to myself is that if you know some of the things that I do, whether it's in the community or as a profession, is that I didn't want to find myself in a place like where I'm saving the whole world. My own kids are lost.
That's true.
My own marriage is on the rocks.
Yeah.
But I'm out fighting for everybody else and home is lacking.
Actually, I want to keep it positive. I was going to go a little bit different direction. I was that one woman at the table in our industry, especially in commercial banking. It's heavily male dominated just because that's how it has always been. And as women start to move into some of those roles, especially leadership positions in that industry, sometimes our male counterparts have a hard time releasing or giving away some of just how we used to always do it. Even in the sense that I worked for, at one point in my history, a small community bank where in my role I reported directly to the CEO of that bank. It was an all-male team except for me, and he was the new person. We had had several CEOs over the course of a year. He came, wanted to meet with the team, get our input as to what had been going on and what the direction. We all gave our feedback. When he met with me next one-on-one, he said to me, "You're very aggressive and confrontational," which is not my personality. I gave it, yeah, I know. But I told this story to Jamie in the past, but that was his perspective because not only was I a woman, I was the only black woman at the table in those positions in that company. And immediately his perception is she's confrontational. She's not giving me feedback on where we need to go in the direction of this company, like my male counterparts did. It was So just sometimes it's as you're moving into those arenas and having to open the door for the next, and then also we have that balancing act as women where we can't be perceived as aggressive when we're competitive. Because I want to be my male counterparts. I want to be the top performing line of business. So when we're being competitive, and we will need to get aggressive and assertive in how we take care of things. But it's sometimes viewed differently when it's coming from a woman.
Tell him what happened to that manager, first of all.
Well, yeah, he's not, yeah, that quickly came to light in terms of just his personality, that it wasn't going to work out for him, but, yeah.
And I think that brings up almost a cultural shift in the corporate world. Because I think it's safe to say that there's room to also give to men who are not used to women being in there. It doesn't mean that they're trying to put women down or, hey, I don't want to make any room for you, but now they're having to adjust because they were also raised in a certain thinking. And so I know I've been through that as well with the male being uncomfortable. My first business, I was like 22 or something, and it was always a situation where they would come up and they would say, well, where's your boss? And I'm like, I'm actually the boss. I'm the youngest one in this room. I know it's weird, but it's me. I've been in that situation, but I've also been in a situation where I was a lower end employee and a top manager in a meeting, he pulled me aside. He's like, I like it that you're okay with disagreeing with me. He was very comfortable with it, and he would actually meet with me because he thought that was very, bold of me, but at the same time, he wanted to see more of that. So I've also worked with men who embrace that and like, hey, yeah, you keep speaking up, hey. So I'm sorry, I didn't take over the mic. Someone else had? Yes.
In just the spirit of kind of wrapping up what we've said, what I have experienced and what I think all of us are saying is that it's the implicit biases that has caused the divide. The implicit biases that people have that don't see women as a leader, and that's why they think we are overly aggressive when we're just speaking our truth. That's why they don't see us at the table with them. That's why they do not see the potential and the benefit of women in leadership. So I think it's important for us to understand that it is about fear. Fear of having to, that glass is half full instead of half empty. They don't see that there is enough to go around, and that speaks to the women in management as well. Being the only woman, being the only black person in management at the table when the decisions are made of who's going to get promoted or who's going to get that leadership track, or is very revealing to be able to understand. It's not about the person, it's not about their ambition, and it's not about their ability to lead. It's about who do they want at the table with them, who do they want to share the profit with, who do they want to be seen with as a leader. So that's why equity is so important, and not just equality. Because so many times you need to have that extra in order to make things equitable. So that's I think is what is missing as we look at how might we be able to come to a culture, a country that does provide that equal opportunity for all genders, all people. That we really have to start getting down below the iceberg of explicit bias. We know that's easy to deal with. But it's when it's implicit and the people don't even realize
That's good. Yeah. That's good.
that they have biases and it's affecting others.
Yes.
That's the problem
Yes.
that we deal with.
Yeah, very true. Ms. Lillian, your point really takes us into the next question that we have here, and that is, what is the difference between gender equity, gender equality, and women's empowerment? Anyone can answer. I'll read the question again, it's a little loaded. What is the difference between gender equity, meaning fairness of treatment, gender equality, and women's empowerment from you all's perspective?
I can answer that to get this started if you'd like. I'll just continue what When I think about your question, it's really kind of what I was alluding to.
Yes.
Is that the difference between the equity and the equality is I reflect back to stories of when I joined corporate America in 1979 as a first-line supervisor in manufacturing.
Wow.
It was important to me that I had relationships with the folks that were the corn cooks and the machine operators, because I couldn't depend on my boss or his peers or those in leadership to help me, to train me, to get me technically sound. I needed that help. And as I became a manager, I knew that I wanted to make it better for those coming behind me. So I was the one that pulled their coat and told them the tricks and gave them that mentoring and support that they needed to continue to grow. That's what equity is. I know you need a little bit more help to be on the same field as everybody else, because you don't have the experience of sitting around the table and talking about financials or talking about leadership or seeing people that look like you in those roles so that you know how to model that. So it was important to me to build that culture. So that's what equity is about. Being able to provide that little extra help to people. And that's why mentoring and us having women working together to help build those leadership skills are so important.
I think I'm going to sound on with Lillian because, you know, when you're coming from an educational background, you really see a lot of women in leadership. You see a lot of female principals. But when you start looking at ethnically the role of leadership inside of education, that's when you might see a great disparity. But I like what you said about the mentorship and how that creates the equitable environment for us. Because as women, if we're stuck in that role of where you had experience of we're competing, but you're not out there to assist or to make an environment where you're reaching out to others, that causes a lot of the rift and the divide amongst ourselves, but also why the male counterparts look at us a little bit differently. So you have to understand the environment that you're playing in and understanding how to maneuver. But the other thing is when you're in that environment or if you're in that role of leadership, your role is to provide an opportunity for those that are coming behind you. And I think that's one of the things of, like with my counterparts and with my colleagues, that we're bonding a little bit more because we're looking at, you know, I saw about 15 more years, I think, before retirement. I'm trying. But when you're thinking about that, our children are our future, and who are we going to have that's stepping into those roles coming next? And so we want to provide or create an environment where the ladies or those individuals, or even if we're thinking of non-binary individuals at this point in time too, where they can feel comfortable but they understand how to maneuver. And I think that's important for the mentorship.
So would you all say that ties us into the other part of that question when you say women empowerment, creating those atmospheres? And I know we're speaking, you know, a little more specifically to the corporate culture and building your career and your success, but as a woman, I grew up in a single household with my mom, and I didn't see what it looks like to be a wife. And I didn't get to see the other parts of the other roles that I think are important to women. And so when you talk about mentorship, I'd love to be mentored in the whole person as a woman, because I think that also impacts your performance on the job. I know for many years since I've been in my 20s, it's always been career. When people see me, it's usually, oh, Shavon, you know, great in what you do. And there's only a few women, looking at Cynthia, gets me emotional, and Yvette Robinson, who would pull me aside and say, how are you doing as a woman? You don't have to clean up everything every day. Like she would just sit me down like, I know you're Shavon Reed and you got your business, but I need you to sit down and let me just, you know, mentor you as a woman, so that when you're in these phases in life where you're trying to figure out career and home, you still have yourself. Because you can get lost with having a great career, you can get lost with trying to be the wife and the mom to everybody, but how do you get back to you? So I didn't mean to deviate from the question, but it made me think about when you say being mentored, I want to be mentored as a whole woman. So.
But I think that goes back to the whole, you know, the balance of life, spiritual, emotional, health-wise. We all need that, women and men in general.
So in second grade, I was put in this gender equity class. No idea what it was. I was in second grade. Don't know if I knew the word gender. Second graders are way smarter now. But in second grade, at 7 years old, it was all females in the class, and we had a male teacher. Today, kids, I'm going to teach you guys how to build a shed. We're going to build a shed. And so we got to have some nails and hammers, a she shed, I guess. I don't think that term was coined yet. But we got to build a shed. I didn't understand till later in life of the difference between equity and equality. Gender equity. You can be like a man and build a shed. Congratulations, you can swing a hammer. But then you're going to go home and do the dishes and wash the laundry and take care of the kids and all that other stuff too. And not necessarily work. So I think for me, going back and looking at what that gender equity is in that moment, I thank my grandmother. My success today is from my grandmother. And she told my dad, because she had 2 boys, but she had a brother. And her father didn't want anything to do with her. Women are not to be seen or heard. You're in the kitchen, and that's it. And her brother got to have fun with Dad. He got to go fishing and hunting and play ball and get to be with Dad. She wanted to be with Dad too. And you know what she told my father as soon as I was born? John, you do not treat your daughter any different than you treat your son. That's equality.
Wow. I'm sorry, I just think, I hear you, and I can't help but to think the generational impact that can have. Yes. And it also creates that nature in women that's like, oh, well, I'm going to do it. I mean, it's a man, you know, that competitive, that's not the healthy competitive that you're talking about. But if you're so used to being rejected by your own father or your own grandfather because it's a woman, because you're a woman, you can't. I'm sorry, that hit me differently. Telling that story. Thank you for sharing that. So the next question. Through the course of your career or even your life, what have you witnessed or experienced as an area of advancement towards equality for women? I'll repeat the question. Through the course of your career or even your personal life, what have you witnessed or experienced as an area of advancement towards equality for women? Anyone can speak.
I'm a county commissioner. Besty serving here as a county commissioner too. And we have a majority female commission. You know, it's not been that way. Many of you know Pat Glass. She was the first female commissioner, and for me, because I worked at the county, she was a mentor, right? So I got to see her in a leadership role, and it really changed, I think, how Manatee County has had leadership at the county commission level, and I'm really grateful for that. But my working career, I worked for a civil engineering firm like Besty. And that is a profession that is dominated by men, right? So, but I was fortunate. I had one of those fathers who told me I could be anything I wanted to be. You could do whatever you want to do if you put your mind to it. It's not to say that he didn't think one of my brothers would take over the business, not his daughter. But I took his words seriously, and I have seen major changes in that industry. Though when you were talking about equality, I thought about something that a guy that I worked with said to me. I never knew quite how to take this. He said, "You're just like one of the guys. I don't think of you as a woman when I'm working with you." I was probably with him depressed that night. But I think that kind of equity, where we don't start off on a different basis, we're making progress. But we know that from whether it's your race, we have a long way to go to perceive each other as equal, right?
Yes.
Because of all these biases, all these biases that are inside. But I think there is progress being made. Yes. I'm very, very hopeful.
It's not working.
Okay, so like I said, I've been with the Bradenton Police Department for almost 14 years. When I first started out, there were not too many women. I actually was I am the second hired black female officer there. There's still only two of us. The other one, she's a supervisor, so she's in administration. Over the years, well, at the time, there used to be someone working there who didn't think much of women officers, and didn't think of us equally. They're no longer there, thank God. But
You can't thank God.
But I mean, it's disheartening to know that you work for someone. And they were in a they were a supervisor, so they were in a position. It's disheartening to think that somebody that's over you looks down on you and doesn't think of you as, an equal person because you're a female. And I'm sorry, I'm just gonna give a little story about that issue, because when a female officer becomes pregnant, they felt like they should be home, not at work. They should be, a woman that's pregnant shouldn't be working. It's just a mess. But over the years, we've come to gain quite a few females, so that we're progressing, and there's still things out there that are kind of blocking females from getting into it because they feel kind of intimidated by the male perspective, or feel like they're not good enough, or they have to do certain things in a certain way to be accepted by the male counterparts. But I don't feel like with me, I feel equal to my counterparts at work. They treat me like one of them. But I think we've kind of evolved as a department with hiring of the more females, and of course we have a female chief. So that.
What is your rank?
I'm officer. Okay. Just patrol officer.
Don't say you are. You are an officer.
Well, there's definitely been tremendous growth just over the course of my career. It's been over 20 years that I've been in banking. Over the course of my life, what I've seen for women in terms of opportunities, I'm very close to my grandmother as well, and just talking with the opportunities that she saw at the time in her life, and then for my mother, and then just watching it, as each generation is able to take advantage of those opportunities that have come up. So that's definitely been a tremendous growth just for women, for that expectation that you are going to be the one to stay home, and there's different periods of our lives just in the course of my career. I mentioned I have 2 children, and I did stay home for a while they were young, and then came back into the workforce. So, we take in that, as Janene mentioned, it's one of the things that also may impact, as your career grows. But, having that opportunity in corporate America now is far more accepted. It's expected in our company, both men and women get 4 months leave when you have a child. So, and that's, yeah. Right.
The trade-off is you have to have a kid.
And what I thought was most men are allowed to take that same lead.
Yeah.
Because the expectation, yes, exactly. Because the child has both parents. So that actually was empowering as a woman, because you know that there's the same expectation, that equality of child rearing. So just wanted to, there's just been a tremendous growth in that.
I love that.
As you tell, my tendency is to wrap things up. I like to listen.
Keep it going, Lillian.
I like to listen and then be able to kind of bring it all home. I think the biggest change, because I've been, I'm probably one of the oldest, well, I don't know. One of the oldest.
That's, we're not sure.
I'm 62. So I still remember going to the white water fountain and the black water fountain and being told, no, baby, you can't drink out that water fountain. Okay, so I'm probably one of the few people that experienced that in their lives. Or having to go to the back window to get ice cream on Saturday afternoon because we couldn't go in the front store. We had to go way around the back and then serve you ice cream out the back window. So I remember that. I'm probably one of the few people on this panel that have experienced that in their life. So we've come a long way, baby. We still have a very long way to go. And I would say that the biggest thing that I see that has helped us has been recently, probably in the last 20 years, I call that recent. Corporate America and America in general has realized that diversity, inclusion, and equity has to be part of their mission statement.
Absolutely.
In order for it to be real, it's got to be part of their mission statement, it's got to be part of their values. So that's made a huge change. Now, living that and creating that inclusive culture, that's where all the work still needs to be done. Because people understand they've got to say it, and they know that in their head, but it hadn't hit everybody's heart yet. So I would say that that's the biggest change, the biggest impact, the biggest thing that we can continue to do. And all of us in this room support that and value diversity, inclusion, and equity, or you wouldn't be here today. So we all have an opportunity to bring a voice to that and to be the voice that helps others to be able to understand when they're displaying implicit bias, when they're saying things that are not inclusive, when they've made decisions that are questionable. We've got to be that voice.
That's right. Ms. Lillian, you have a tendency of leading me into our next question. So thank you. So our next question, and she led right into it, from voting rights, equal pay, education, and opportunities, to leadership and ministry, and justice against sexual harassment, what do you believe are still obstacles for women today? What do you believe are still obstacles for women today?
I'm going to find a way to add another story, so hopefully. So for me personally, it is the pregnancy thing. You know, and for me being naive, because I had never been treated differently from my parents, and I was lucky to have amazing male bosses along the way. But the first male boss at Bank of America was not one of the ones that thought it was equal for women. And I was handed on his team. I was 6 months pregnant. He had never met me. He meets me. And that's kind of when I started to learn that I was different. Because I was handed to him pregnant. And I had all these big things. I was dead weight to him. I didn't learn that till later, that there probably was some bad things that going on that I probably could have gotten in trouble with HR. But I don't think that that's good to do to anyone. What I thought was even better is I had recently read a book called Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. And my dad gave me that book. He wrote in it, and it was beautiful. What he wrote to me just touches my heart. And so I decided, it was from Houston, Texas, by the way, I decided to write him a message in this book. And I was like, well, I'm going to get fired, but I really don't care because I don't want to work for him. I would never want to work for him. I got a phone call from him. Thank you. The unconscious bias, I call it unconscious bias. He had no idea that I felt or was treated differently because I was pregnant. But I called him out on it. And I think that's one thing that we can all learn from each other is, you know, you see something, say something, because he did not even, so he says no, that he was treating me differently, but he was, and I felt it. And even worse, fast forward, an HR partner talking to it about the equality of pay, that is a huge thing. To have the conversation, how are you going to know if you're getting paid equal compared to your male counterpart if you can't say, hey, how much are you making? You can't do it, you're not going to know. Good. All right, you're good. And to end my story, I asked my mom, was she paid equal? She had a high school degree and was an archaeologist, a really cool job. Later in life, I did a paper and a study on the equality of pay. So she called her male counterpart, who was a male, high school graduation. He was making 50% more than her. 50% more than her. And if you don't have those courageous conversations today, it's going to keep happening. I don't know if that answered your question. It did.
Again, what are the struggles that you still feel women are facing today, the obstacles?
This is going to be seen, it can become very controversial. One, I don't think women advocate for themselves like men do in the business place. I think that's part of it. And like Jamie just said, unless you go out there and you put yourself out there and you ask for that raise and you want what you know that you deserve, you know, because you don't know. Men are more assertive in that way. You know, they're more willing to go to the table and say, I deserve this. So that's that. I said I have 2 children. Both my son and my daughter serve in the Marine Corps. Prior to my daughter joining the Marine Corps, we had a conversation. I'm very proud of both of my children. I'm very proud that, and this is where it can get very, these are my personal beliefs. So I'm that's on camera. These are my personal beliefs. Okay? Yeah, you know, but everything gets you nowadays. And if you're going to copy my words, please copy them from the beginning to the end and don't put any dots in them. Okay? You know, I raised my kids in a Christian faith. And I made sure that they understood that they were created differently. But that didn't make one better than the other. And just because sometimes they both know how to do the same thing doesn't mean that they should do the same thing. My daughter, prior to going into the Marine Corps, had the ability and had the contract to go into Special Forces.
Hoorah.
But I raised my son to be a protector. And so the conversation I had with my daughter 2 days before she joined to go into Special Forces was, I know you will get there. I know you will make it through. But when you're standing in an embassy in a foreign country, serving alongside another fellow Marine, and you are both taken as POWs, all they have to do is torture you just a little in front of a fellow Marine to break him a lot sooner than any of his training would allow. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So my daughter really sat back and thought about it and said, just because she knows she could do that job, she had to step back and say, you know what? For the sake of others and the potential of what might happen to them.
Yes, right.
That's good. That's not for me to do.
That's good.
Okay? But she is still serving our country in a big way. Yes. All right? But for me as a mom to have that conversation with her, because she had to put it into perspective, is sometimes we have to remove ourselves.
Right.
And we have to sit back and say, what is in the best interest? And that's, I think, how you started. What's in the best interest of my community? What is in the best interest of where I work? What is in the best interest for my household? I was telling ladies at the table I'm doing a Bible study called True Woman 101. 2 years ago I celebrated my birthday halfway to death. You can laugh, it's okay. You know, I took the average lifespan of a woman and realized that 2 years ago I was halfway to death. And I'm embracing it. But at this time, True Woman 101 taught me, do you know what woman means in Hebrew? It means soft strength. Soft strength. Not weakness, not meekness, but soft strength. And I do believe that women have that strength that for thousands of years has always been present, just misunderstood, because sometimes our passion looks like aggression, okay? And us stepping aside to let somebody else get the crown does not mean we weren't present to make sure that it happened.
That's good.
And I think we need to embrace that.
Anyone else from our panel?
I just want to say something because, you know, I know we're talking about equity in women, but I just can't help but think, and I guess because I am a woman and I have an incredible daughter, but I also have an incredible son. And I worry sometimes about our young men. And there are a lot of them are being raised by single mothers, which are great, but they don't have the example. I worry about them having the strength and being taught, you know, how important and how to interact as men. So I just had to say that because I know we're focusing on women and equity, but there are concerns. If you've seen some of the articles, the boys and young men in our community and how they're being left behind. So it is a big issue, I think, as well.
I think it is. I think you'll be happy to hear this next question.
Oh, okay.
You guys are on it. I mean, the energy is good here. This next question is, do you believe there's a way to maintain the strength of men in our society as women rise to take on more leadership roles? Again, do you believe there's a way to maintain the strength of men in our society as women rise to take on more leadership roles? How do we ensure mutual respect?
I'll start. I do. I think that there's certainly room for everyone. And it made me think, you know, some of the stories brought back a story where my mom told my sister was a Class A carpenter. She became a Class A carpenter because it paid more money than working as a secretary in the office. She worked for Eli Lilly Pharmaceuticals. So she had the opportunity to go into the shop. And she was a single mother, she was raising 2 kids, and she's like, that's where the money is. She became a Class A carpenter, and she was really good at it. But she would come home after busting concrete all day and taking care of the kids and then working a second job to do things. My mom said, you cannot work like a man and expect to have a good, long life. And she would tell us that all the time. You're smart enough, you've got the aptitude, but your body's not going to hold up. And that has proven to be true. And she applied that not just to that situation, but to everything. And as we said, the soft strength that we bring, we all have different hats and different roles. And I think we should remember that. As a leader, I will tell you that my most favorite teams was when I had majority of men on my team. Because I think men react differently to female leaders. If you respect them, they will respect you. And if I value what they brought, they value what I brought. So I say that to say it takes both men and women to have a successful anything. So I do think that there is definitely room for this.
I think it's what we're teaching our children also. I have 2 teenagers, they're 2 months apart, 2 different high schools, and the boy is just a pure boy, I guess, and the girl is just wanting to be into film. But where we're moving towards, if you really understand the current generation that is in your high schools, like your 15 to 20-year-olds, that's where that bulk is, because, you know, like, I'm a Generation Xer, so, you know, like, my generation, we're like in our 40s and leading the stream, and, you know, I guess.
Halfway to death.
Halfway to death. I learned that this morning. I was like, okay, I'm not claiming it, but it's all right. But truthfully, can we all be on equal playing field? I don't know if we're going to be on equal playing field ever, but can we understand how to work together and the importance of valuing one another? Yeah. I think that's the critical key. But the critical key is making sure that the generations coming up hear what we're saying, these conversations, because these conversations are so important that they can't be contained within its brick and mortar. They have to be placed in those environments where that new generation can start to hear and understand, where when Miss Lillian was seeing the blacks and the whites and she had to go behind the building to get her ice cream, or like for me instance, I didn't feel that I met any type of racial discrimination when I was coming up, truthfully, until I got into the education world in my career. But for our children or your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, they have to understand and know that that existed, but also understand how do we work together and valuing one another. So I think that's where we have to start imparting that information, because adults are adults. Like, because do you really have conversation with kids? Like, when you really think about it, do you have a conversation with a kid, or 8-year-old or a 10-year-old? Sometimes, but if they're not just in your own venue or your own environment. And so that's what's most important, I think, moving forward in the conversations.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you. That's where we're headed, right? It's like our future is our children. And if we're running this race to see who gets the next top position, I think we have to teach them to still respect, no matter where your role is, no matter where your position is. If you want to be your dream, I know women who their dream was to be a stay-at-home mom. Yeah. Celebrate that. She's raising our future, raising our society. That doesn't make her any less, and no man or no woman should make her feel that she's not successful because she's at home raising her babies. You know, so I believe in also teaching our kids that same message. This concludes the questions that we have up here. We would like to take 2 or 3 questions or comments from the audience. Yes, ma'am.
I'm more than halfway to death. What is the age? This is the second NAACP program I've attended in 3 weeks. This is a knock your socks off. Thank you all on the panel and for your leadership. It's been terrific. The other one was at the church over on the other side of town, which was on an education one, which happens to be one of my interests. On the achievement gap. It was a knock your socks off presentation. So thank you very much for this. I look forward to the next one that you all, the leadership you all designed. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So clearly gender equity is a women's issue, but it's really also a women and men's issue.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think the challenge for men is to really get that and to live that way. You know, we talk about mentorship and leadership. It's not just, you know, and for men, it's not just supporting women, but it's also supporting men in being comfortable, being different, right? You know, I think every one of the men in this room has been present to conversations that really don't support gender equity. But we see it, but we don't necessarily say it, all right? And it's not easy for men to be mentors or leaders or examples in a culture of men. But that's what we need to do. We need to step to the plate and be equal partners with women in making the changes that are necessary to create a more equitable society. The other point I'd make is that I don't think any of us should accept that corporate environment or our general social environment needs to be the way it is. I think in a lot of ways we're sort of moving in a direction that is we're losing our sense of humanity, and we're losing our sense of community, because it's all about money, and it's driving the train. And I think both men and women need to be partners and say, hey, let's take a step back and look at it. I think that's an area where women can play a major role in helping to redefine what community and business and corporate environment looks like. But I think men need to be really, need to be very supportive, both toward women, but also among their peers, their men peers.
Wow. Thank you so much for being extremely transparent. I think we all need to hear that. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Joanne Spencer, and I've enjoyed this, and this is what is needed, and I've heard from all of you. Some I know. I worked with you to keep Manatee beautiful one day with the children at school. I know Cynthia, worked with her, Reverend Sykes and his wife, Dr. Capers. I know, all of this. So my question is, how do we get this back to our community? I go on 15th Street trying to tell about the votes and whatever. I look at the television and all of the issues that we have. We have some real issues, but how do we as adults go back to our young people? They speak a different language. What do we do from now? How do we do this? Thank you.
And that's the real question. I think everyone asks that. What is the tangible action that we have to do when we leave this room? And sometimes it's in small doses. This is just my opinion. Sometimes it's just in your workplace. It's having a relationship with that male guy that has an issue with women. And maybe it's building a relationship. I remember growing up in high school, and I was really close friend with a white male who didn't like black people. And he absolutely let me know he did not like black people. He's like, but I like you. I like you too. I love you, man. But here's the thing. He was vocal about that. He really had disliked black people. And instead of me saying, well, why do you let black people? Let's go, it was more like, I was actually very intrigued, and I got to know him, and I found out later that he was extremely bullied as a kid by a group of black boys, and it stuck with him. So for him, it was every black person that he didn't want to have a relationship with. So my message to myself was, what can I do in this environment, God? How can you use me even for this one person? And how can I show him something different? I don't know where he is now in his life, but I sure hope that, that moment had an impact. So that's what I would say for myself from a personal perspective is like I think someone mentioned, what are you doing in your own environments? Even with having boys and raising boys, I'm trying to teach them how to respect women and also respect themselves. Because they're so bombarded with everything being so sexualized. Right. I can't walk in a mall without seeing some woman with some outfit, her she's stripped down, and I'm having, And so I don't want him thinking just because you look at a woman that you have to think of her in a sexual nature, you speak to her a certain way. No, I expect you to respect her. I don't care what she's doing. Right. That's me teaching him that, no matter what the world is teaching him. So I think that we all have to, that's a question for everybody in this room to ask themselves, what can I do? I don't know where your workplace is. I don't know what your home environment is. I don't know what relationships or what cultural upbringing you were brought in. Maybe there's some things in you that, because I know black people who have a problem with white people. And I'm saying, well, why are you don't become what you feel hates you? So it's like, question yourself. I know women who have issues with men, and they call them daddy issues. Maybe the place is to start with you. Maybe it's not you going out to talk to anyone and say, I need some healing. I was hurt. I have a wrong perspective. And what is it I can do within myself to change my perspective and then do something towards other people? And that's just my response. Yeah.
You know what? You said wrap it up. And that is a really good question for us to leave with. What can we do? One of the things that I have done was to help start a mentoring program at Palmetto High School. We started about 7 or 8 years ago. And I say we because it was our Black Employee Resource Group at Tropicana. I was the executive sponsor. Alicia Cotton and I went to the school board and said, hey, we want to reach out to the community because, number one, we want to expose our youth to corporate America and the opportunities that are out there. And we want to focus on those students that are right on the cusp but not making it. You know, those B and C students that really have some questions that they're going to graduate from high school and what they're going to do after. So we started a mentoring program where we can embrace them, match them with the mentor, and help, number one, make sure they graduated from high school, but also open up for technical school or what other opportunities were out there for them. So I think, as you know, I always listened to my mom and my aunt and all those other people, but I was influenced by other people outside the family as well. So if we could be that other person outside the family, give them positive reinforcement, I think it really does help our youth.
It does. Sorry, this is our last comment.
Okay. Maybe you guys can help me out here. I have a mentee who is a female, extremely competent, very competent. So she is the chief of staff for Pasco County government. So an assistant county administrator position comes open. I encourage her to apply. She didn't think she was qualified for that job. So she has a master's degree Public Administration from Northwestern University. Wow. She graduated magna cum laude, undergraduate, but she's not qualified for this. So I was on the interview panel for the Assistant County Administrator. So I interviewed all this. Clearly, she would have been the top 3. Wow. She didn't think, and no matter how many times I talked to her, no matter how many times I went to her office and said, you really need a push, she wouldn't do it. I'm wondering if there was a female mentor, if she could have made more of a difference than what I was able to do.
Can I answer that question? Jamie, go ahead. I'll let you.
Just real quick. Honestly, it's ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone knows this, but I was last year named 40 under 40 Tampa Bay Business Journal. One of the most influential people, young people in Tampa Bay. And first, you know, I was, what, like, no. And then you go there and you see what other people did, and I was like, I don't deserve or belong to be in this room, right? We are the worst and hardest on ourselves, no matter what. No matter who tells us or whatever, it's our internal truth. And I don't know where she's at, but I don't know if it would have mattered, man or woman. I think she would have needed to have more of that internal confidence.
Yeah, I would have to agree, and I speak from a personal and a professional standpoint. I'm a certified life coach, and I do executive coaches with also people who are in executive positions, right? Maybe they're great at a skill or a craft, but they do it internally. And one of the biggest things that I see is confidence. I've worked with people who are, and I don't promote a lot of it, but they're on very esteemed levels to the rest of the world. But they'll come to me and they'll say, I just don't feel like I'm good. I can't even speak well. They're so nervous. And I'm like, okay, well, there's a lot of things to unpack with individuals, and sometimes it's hard. Let me just say this. Harriet Tubman said, I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if they had known they were slaves. So what does it tell you? There's sometimes that we are stuck in our mentality, and some of us have grown up in households where we're being told that we can't. And so as much as we've tried to fight through that, when a certain opportunity comes, we still hear that same voice when we were 10. And so it's told us that. I think there's layers of things that could be happening with this woman. So we're just throwing out what could be the option. But to answer your question specifically, it really depends if a woman could have helped her any differently than you because of where she is with her own insecurities. But sometimes, yes, maybe she would respond better to a female mentor, but you don't know unless you try. But it sounds like to more me, it's more internal with her than it is just, because she got all the accolades, she's probably had all the, Yeah.
And it's not unusual. If it had not been for male mentors to force me to step outside my comfort zone, I would not have done that 30 years ago. Because you always say, oh, they've got more than me. No, you. It took people saying, no, you're the one. You're the leader we need. And we need male mentors to help us with that. So I want you to know that you're doing a wonderful job. I want you to know that it takes more than one perspective. So I would encourage you to encourage her to accept others to be on her board of directors. She needs champions. She needs somebody tapping her on the shoulder and say, look, I don't even want you to interview for this job. You're the next person. Because that's what has to happen sometimes. I wouldn't be in Florida if someone had not done that for me. I would have still been at Frito-Lay when I retired. But it took somebody at Tropicana to say, no, I want you. So sometimes you just got to force people into it.
And I'm so glad that Lillian said that the value of male leadership and mentoring to women, I think, is just as important.
Very important.
And I'm just going to be frank, in my life, I haven't had much of male leadership as a father at all. I don't really know what that looks like. And it has been, unfortunately, has been rare opportunities where a man will mentor me and speak to me in a way that's respectful outside of trying to set me up for a sex. I'm sorry, I'm just frank. But so it's refreshing to me when a man is able to say, I see your strengths, other than your face and your body and your butt. I see that you're great at this. Let me push you a little bit. That's man, I would love to see more of that. I mean, I love that. So I please, for the men out there who maybe question, well, what is my involvement in all of this, and could I be a mentor to a woman? Trust me, there are women who are hungry for that. Many of us haven't had fathers. We would like to see what pure love looks like outside of anything else that society has made it. And so I just commend you and thank you for your question, and I hope that's something that this panel is going to do. And I think at this moment, I certainly want to thank you all for having me today as your moderator and as your host. Can we please give a round of applause for Ms. Tarnisha as she comes up and closes. Lovely ladies, and you guys have to give it up for them. Stand and celebrate this moment. Let's stand up, you guys have been sitting. I know you're a little cold because I am. We have to warm the room up with so much love. I'm so appreciative of each of you that God is not robbing the stomach and give us the honest and just raw and authentic version of what her story looks like. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys can sit down, I'm sorry, I just had to get you out of your seats. So again, thank you, Shavon Reed. You can find her at ShavonReed.com. Thank you so much. I knew when we knew about what we were going to do for today, we had to put a spin on it. As you all know, we've had, as an organization, we've had some organizational structure issues, and it's okay. It's okay. We're now at a different place. Thank the Lord for that. And I am so, so grateful for this task. I do not think that this was unintentional. I believe God had a hand in all of this. And I think not only that, I think it's very, very important to highlight I am the first youngest African American to lead this organization. And with that, it provides challenges. You have older people, and I'm not to talk about our seasoned people. You have an older person that is so used in their ways to get things done, and then you have this younger person that's used to doing stuff, tweeting and Facebooking, and no, we don't need paper. I hate paper. We don't need paper. We need to do this, and it creates a difference of opinions. But the one thing that I truly believe, we all love this organization, and I know we're better together. I feel that we're better together. It's with that spirit in mind, I'm going to ask that you look on your tables. There's applications there. I'm going to ask each of you to join the cause. This is the oldest, the boldest, the greatest civil rights organization in the nation. I want you to grab that application and let's fill it out. I have one application I already know over here that's being sold by Angela Loggins. We're going to celebrate her for being our first application for today. Who's going to join us today?
to join this organization because we're better together, right? In order for this organization to be around for another 100 years, so our generation, our kids can take over that, we need each of you to continue to carry the torch. And I need you guys to think about that, so I don't want you to leave any applications unfilled. Again, it's $30 to join, $75 over a course of 10 years for a $750 lifetime membership. So I'm really, really happy about what we bring to the table. We sung one of the songs from our forefathers, and that's Lift Every Voice. That represents who we are as a national organization, and I really am passionate about that. Without moving further along, I want to also just highlight the fact that I have to celebrate someone that's very, very special here with me today. It's my grandmother. Oftentimes, you guys have heard me tell my story about who's influenced me and who has pushed me along the way. It is my grandmother. She has been one of the threads in what I do. She has been inspirational spiritually, physically. She's fed me, she's comforted me, and I'm just really ecstatic to have her presence here today. So I publicly celebrate you for being the woman that you are in our family. So I'm happy to do that. And I just thank you guys so much. I want our executive committee to stand and come up and join us. I want everyone to know who we are. If you can come up, because I think some of you guys were not here when we first did this, but I want to always take the time to highlight. Oftentimes people look at you as saying, you're the one that's putting things together, but it's really not me. It's just great people that stand alongside of me. And I also want to highlight this young man back here. He is one of our newest executive committee members. He graduated from law school. He's come to serve with us, and I think that's important for us to do. So younger generations back up and tell them, we got some work for you. Do you want to work? You want some mentorship? Well, I'm going to push you right in, and he'll tell you. I call him every day. I need you to check on this. I need you to check on that. And I think you're doing a phenomenal job, and I want to encourage you to continue doing what you do, because you'll be standing here one day. So I just want you to understand that. So it's with that. I want everyone to know that we're still thriving, we're still moving, we're still in the position to do great things. I want to thank each of you for taking the time to spend here with us today, and it is our honor to serve our community. We're better together. Thank you. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I forgot. Come on, Reggie. One initiative, two initiatives that are true and dear to my heart. One is diversity and inclusion. You'll see that on our website. Our website is
Manatee.org. ManateeNAACP.org.
ManateeNAACP.org. Please view our website. It's one of the best. Thanks to him. That's our communications chair. As a matter of fact, I'll go around and let everyone introduce themselves so I don't get anything wrong. Your position and what your name and your position.
I'm Peggy Delgado. I'm the Assistant Secretary.
I'm John Morrell Jr., Legal Redress Chair.
Joanne Spencer, Religious Chair. Remember, they who are spiritual.
Lisa Williams, and I sit on the Finance Committee.
Susan Thompson, I'm the Treasurer.
Booker Wilkins, Communications Chair.
James Sachs, Advisor for Religious Affairs.
And that's our team. I'm so special to have you. The next thing, as I mentioned, we have on our website, one of the initiatives that we're really hounding in on for 2020 is diversity and inclusion, and then the 2020 census. Everyone must be counted. So if you have a brother, sister, uncle, someone that's living under the bridge that you may know about, we need to get them counted. It starts when the count takes place.
You'll receive your invitations March the 12th, the week of the 12th. You can do it online, or you can request a paper copy. The Sheriff's Department is helping out, making sure that we know who's in these communities, okay? Do this 2020, everyone does count. Thank you for having me.
With that in mind, in order for us to change, in order for us to build, in order for the roadways to get done, everyone must be counted. It is our due diligence that we're going to go out and we're going to help support the count for every individual. I ask that you do the same. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you back next year.